So, tonight, the first question. When I'm unable to sleep, I silently recite chants until I fall asleep. Is this appropriate, as do I use chants becoming something that puts me to sleep? Well, I think sometimes we have to be practical, so if it helps, good. Because maybe what's keeping you awake is anxiety, stress, agitation, anxiety about what's coming tomorrow, stress about what's happened already in your life. That triggers all kinds of mental and physical things coming up which keeps us awake. So chanting, like meditation, like listening to Dhamma, can relax you. So many people listen to the Dhamma as they fall asleep listening to Dhamma, which, in the long run it's not the best, because you want to respect the Dhamma, understand the Dhamma from what you're listening. But in the short term, chanting or listening to Dhamma, if it helps you sleep, maybe that's because you're relaxing, and that's a good thing. I would recommend perhaps a skillful way that doesn't risk misusing chanting or Dhamma is to practice metta meditation before you go to sleep. At least try it, because what did the Buddha say? He said one who practices metta sleeps well. So you've got to prove whether that's true or not through your own practice. So maybe try it for the next, if you're having sleep problems, try it for a few weeks before you go to the bed. Set everything else aside, get rid of the phone or the screen, and do some metta meditation. And that may mean chanting as well. Chanting something like we just chanted tonight, the Reflections on Universal Well-Being, or the Metta Sutta, or actually meditate, cultivating metta in your meditation for a while, at least 10 minutes, I'd say, and maybe longer. If you do that every night before you go to sleep, that will become a good habit where you're bringing up the aspiration and the intention for yourself to be well, free from suffering, and then spreading that thought and that feeling out to your family or your people around you. And you can extend that meditation as long as you wish, as long as you have energy. And if you're starting to feel tired, well, lay down, and you might find you sleep well because you're relaxed and you have a very wholesome state of mind. The important thing is to be letting go of the unnatural causes for sleeplessness or restlessness, such as stress, agitation, anger. You notice if you have a strong emotion coming up, anxiety about health issue, anger towards somebody else, fear, worry, these really stir the mind up and you can't sleep. So any meditation that calms you down will help, but I'd recommend metta, because the Buddha already told us. He said, you'll sleep well, you'll wake up well, the devas will look after you. So if you feel in yourself, when you practice metta, you start to feel calm, relaxed, more, you could say more self-confident in a way, even protected by your own goodwill. And then you also have the faith that the devas are looking after you as you're developing metta, then you can sleep without having to worry about anything. You don't have to worry what tomorrow is going to bring, because you feel relaxed and the devas are helping. And if there is anything to worry about, well, maybe you put it all in the hands of the devas. They can watch over you. Do I have an experience of that? Yes, I can share one. I was once at Wat Marp Chan. Venerable Joel was visiting us from Wat Marp Chan, so I was thinking of a few things from Wat Marp Chan. So many, many years ago, I was in Kuti in the forest in Wat Marp Chan. Back in the old days when they didn't have that many kutis, and not many monks, not many buildings, and there was a lot of snakes in Wat Marp Chan. You meet all the time, big ones, little ones, many poisonous snakes. I used to have king cobras come to my kuti, and if I met a king cobra, I'd kind of just think, oh, you can kill me now, oh dear, there's nothing I can do. So quite regularly encounter that kind of thing. Then one night I was meditating before I went to bed, sitting, and then I lay down about 11 o'clock to sleep. I fell asleep. And about 12 o'clock I was woken by somebody poking me in the ribs. So I quickly looked around, who's there? Because I'm in a kuti on my own. Normally there's no one there. Shine my torch, there's no one here. So who was poking me in the ribs then? So I shine my torch around, can't see anything. So I thought, oh, must be dreaming. Went back to sleep, and I was just falling asleep again. And exactly the same thing happened, except for this time I was half awake. So I knew, oh, someone's poking me right under the ribs. If you really want to wake someone up, that's the best place to poke them, under the ribs. You go, arr. So I, quickly got up, lit my candle, got my torch. Something's going on. Still, there's nobody there. But as I shone my torch around, searched around, because I was sure something was up, because this, whoever it was, had been poking me to wake me up, and I realised that. There was a huge banded crate, which is the most poisonous of snakes. They're very deadly. And this was huge, and he was trying to come in through my window. But I had a mosquito screen on the window, luckily, where you're trying to force it, because sometimes you can force a mosquito screen open and it gets between the mosquito screen and the wood of the frame and get in. And he probably wasn't after me, he's looking for a mouse or something to eat, but if I had encountered him it would have been risky, because they're so poisonous. So I had to spend a little bit of time with a broom, encourage him to go back into the forest, which I did successfully. So my room was safe, and then I shut the shutters of my window so he couldn't come back. Normally I didn't like to do that because it makes the kuti stuffy at night, but there was a reason I had to, so I shut the shutters. And then I thanked the devas for waking me up, and then I went to bed. So I went to bed and slept very soundly, even though there was this big dangerous snake around, because I knew the devas were looking after me. So I said, thank you, devas. So, probably the modern scientific mind would say, oh, it's just your own nervous system twitching or reacting or something. But if you're awake and you can feel someone poking you there, but there's no reason for your physical body to react like that, I wouldn't say it's a twitch in my nervous system or something. I'd say it's a deva. And maybe when you meditate, sometimes you also see these things, not with your naked eye always, although you can, but maybe in your samadhi. So that's just one example. And many monks I know have had devas help them when they're sleeping. Of course, it doesn't always work to your advantage, because if the devas are looking after you when you're asleep, if you oversleep, they don't like that. Because the devas are invested in you doing good, meditating more, practicing more. They don't want lazy monks and lazy people. So like Wat Nana Chat, they used to have one kuti where there was a deva living, and nobody could sleep for very long in that kuti, because if you overslept, the deva would pull your leg. Monks stayed in the kuti for many years. Monks had their leg pulled there. Maybe that's the origin of the phrase "pulling your leg." You know, it's not from a joke; it's actually from a deva. The worst time would be in the middle of the day if you slept too long. If you sleep for half an hour, okay. But if you 2 hours, 3 hours, get your leg pulled. This went on for a long time. In the end, perhaps the monks have been a bit selfish. They said, "We're not going to stay in this kuti anymore. It's too disturbed." So they let the nuns stay there. So the nuns started staying in the kuti, and exactly the same thing happened. So obviously, devas are not too worried by gender. You're a monk, you oversleep, you get your leg pulled. You're a nun, you oversleep, you still get your leg pulled. So I remember one nun coming out, "Bante, Bante, somebody's been pulling my leg." I said, "Yeah, that's our resident deva. You don't need an alarm clock in that kuti." So devas protect you in many ways. They protect you from your own defilements. Maybe they help point you out something. You're indulging in sleep, you're greedy, you're angry. Sometimes they help you to see something. And sometimes they protect you from danger, from a snake or a tree. This famous story, Lumpur Chok is asleep and he had a dream of his mother calling him. And his mother was a nun, but nowhere near where he was. But he heard his mother's voice. So he woke up and he thought, "Oh, my mum needs me." And she was a nun, I think, in another part of the same monastery. So he came out of his kuti, and at that moment a huge tree fell on the kuti and smashed it. If he'd been inside, he'd probably be killed. So devas, they protect you, and if you spread metta before you go to sleep, you'll feel well, feel calm, relaxed, go to sleep. And the devas look after you, so then you don't have to worry, so you don't have to be too caught up in your worries. That will also help you sleep. Dear Ajahn, what are the hand gestures of the Buddha Rupa on the main hall signifying with metta? I assume you mean this Buddha. This is our main hall. So this Buddha, what do we got? We got the Buddha, 2 hands. So this is the same mudra. That's the way they describe a Buddha statue, what mudra it's in, what pose. So this is in the mudra teaching, because you'll notice there's a Dhammacakka wheel in each palm of the hand, and that always signifies the Buddha is teaching. Because people often think if the Buddha's like this, he's blessing, and he could be. But if the Dhammacakka wheel's there, it means teaching. Why is the Buddha standing up teaching? Because he's in the heaven realm, teaching his mum. Dawating's a heaven realm. The Buddha, if you read the Buddha's life story, one vasa, one pansa, he went to teach his mum to do his duty as a good son, because his mum died just after he was born, and he wanted her to know the Dhamma. So she's a deva in the heaven realm, so he has to go to the heaven realm to teach her the Dhamma. That's the Buddha teaching in heaven. And that's why it's gold and it's got diamonds and it's sort of shiny. As they say, the Buddha is most radiant when he's in the heaven realm teaching. And then they have this famous incident on the day at the end of the rains, the Buddha's coming down from heaven, returning. And Venerable Sariputta saw him and said, wow, the Buddha looks the most radiant I've ever seen him. Because he's coming back from heaven realm. It's his, I guess you can say it's his celestial body, the inner body of the Buddha. There's the normal coarse body, human body, but there's the mind-made body as well. And that's perhaps what he's seeing. And they say one of the blessings of that experience was not only Sariputta, but everyone in that area, all the villagers, Buddhists, they all temporarily gained the divine eye. So they all could see the heaven realms, because they could see the Buddha, and they could see all the devas, and there are many heaven realms. And they could also see the hell realms and the ghost realms, temporarily, so you might call it just a sudden burst of samadhi and psychic powers. They see all these beings in other realms, and so everyone realised, oh, this is true, what the Buddha mentioned, that karma is important, what karma you make, because these other realms do exist, because they're seeing them. So we call that the Buddha opening the world systems for everyone to see, and gives rise to this custom, say in Buddhist countries, particularly in Thailand, they call it Dhamma Tewo. So it's the day after the Vasa, the Buddha coming back from the heaven realm, so everyone gathers to make merit and make offerings, because they believe, oh, when the Buddha's this radiant, peaceful, whatever offerings you make is going to have really good, good merit, good karma is going to be made. So the modern equivalent is, when I was a young monk, we used to go, all the monks, Ajahn monks would be invited to the sports stadium in the local province on that day, and hundreds and hundreds of people would come with piles and piles of food, and they make all these little sweets wrapped in banana leaves. And they offer them, you get bowls and bowls and bowls full of all kinds of foodstuffs, but particularly these rice sweets. And you'd need a truck to take them all back to the monastery, and get to the monastery, you have mountains of sweets, which, you know, as a monk you can only eat a little bit, so you take your share. But some monks were really into it, and they'd sit down on the floor in front of this mountain of rice sweets, and they'd pick out the ones they like. I'd say, they're all good. What's all the fuss about? And they said, no, this one's good and that one's good. Because they're all made by different people, and I guess like every kind of food depends on the cook who makes the best version. And then we had fun with all the rest we gave away. Get all the school kids in, give to the school kids, the villagers, share all the leftovers with everyone else. That's the modern Dhamma Tewo, but it comes from this time when the Buddha came back from Dawahingsa heaven, teaching his mum. So that's that Buddha. It's modelled as it's not an exact replica, but it's the same mudra that's in Ajahn Chah's Uposatha Hall. So that's where we got the idea from. Ajahn Chah's Uposatha Hall, the Buddha is in this pose. It's dark, bronze. If you ever go to Wat Pah Pong, Ajahn Chah's monastery, you can see it. Dear Ajahn, what would you recommend to see as the right intention to bring to the practice at the very beginning of the retreat? Oh, this probably has been sitting there for a while unanswered. Well, the same intention as in the middle of the retreat. Every day is a new day, isn't it? And we all know this cliche, keeping your mind in the present moment. When you're mindful, you're paying attention to the present moment. So if you talk in that way, you can say, well, there is no beginning of the retreat, there's no end of the retreat, there's just the present moment. And you notice when you are more mindful and you're just focusing in the present moment, say on the breath, or any other object, there's a sense of timelessness, isn't it? You're not thinking of time, beginning, end, time passing slowly, fast. You forget all about time. If you really become mindful of the breath, say, you just don't notice time. And a long time can pass, but it can seem very quick. And you're not thinking of time. That's because you're mindful. That's because you're putting effort in, bringing the mindfulness up and letting go of all the distractions. And so it brings you to the Dhamma, and you may be focusing on the arising and ceasing of thoughts, sensations in the body. And when your mindfulness is strong and continuous, there's a sense of timelessness. So we're constantly coming back to that. The beginning of the day, the beginning of the retreat, beginning of each meditation session, any time, beginning of a meal, beginning of any activity, cleaning and sweeping and doing the things we do. There's always a good time to just set your mindfulness up. What am I doing right now? Where's my mind? Because it could be miles away, couldn't it? You've been letting your mind wander, so you begin a new activity or a new day or a new meditation. Bring your mind to the present moment. Drop all this stuff you were carrying around, all the fuzziness and the stuff in your mind, drop it and then start again. And a lot of meditation is about starting again, over and over again. What they call the beginner's mind. That phrase that was coined, Zen mind, beginner's mind. But anyone practicing the Dhamma has to have the beginner's mind. Because one of our bad habits is to keep carrying around perceptions of self and the past and the good and the bad and who I am and who I think I am. It's all your mental baggage is what you bring in to every meditation session. And sometimes you sit down and you think, I've meditated before, I know what I'm doing, and you sit there and your mind is not present, it's just wandering off all over the place as usual. Because you think you know what you're doing, you're some kind of expert who's done it a lot before, you don't try very hard, maybe you're a bit complacent. So the beginner's mind is every time you meditate, you're starting afresh. You have to accept whatever comes up in your mind. You're feeling restless, agitated, angry, worried, you've got desire, or you're feeling very peaceful and there's not much coming up in your mind. It doesn't matter. Whatever's coming up, just accept it and start afresh with your mindfulness. And that will help learning how to let go, not to cling on to things, because as we know, clinging, attachment is the cause of suffering. So it's one of the main things you're learning, particularly in meditation. You're learning how to let go. Let go with wisdom. It's not just done in a kind of sort of careless way or neglectful way, but just getting the skill of knowing how to let go of thoughts and moods and memories and things you've been carrying around that disturb you, suffering. You have to learn how to put things down. To do that, every moment has to, it's like you come back to every new moment. You start your meditation, you're walking, you're sitting. How well are you letting go of things, putting things down? That means the future as well, because we spend a lot of our time planning and scheming and projecting onto what we're going to do or planning to do. And then the past, all this stuff that we're carrying around. Learn to just put it all down, put it aside, just present moment. Often at first that seems boring, doesn't it? Present moment awareness seems boring. You want to think about all this other stuff. But watch how it makes you suffer. You make your plan. How many of you have been thinking what you're going to do after the retreat? You make all these plans and half of them are never going to happen. It's never going to turn out like you were planning anyway. So why waste all that time when you could have been mindful of the breath? You're sitting there planning. Sometimes, if you're a warrior, then it tends to go negative. So you're sitting, oh, next week I've got to do this, and I've got this job, and that thing, and that problem, and then I've got to meet that person. Oh no. You're just sitting there, totally peaceful, and yet you've already created a whole world of suffering for yourself, projecting into the future. Just come back to the present moment again, begin again, next breath in, next breath out. Or the past, remembering what happened 3 years ago. I shouldn't have said that, it shouldn't be like this, life is not fair, why did this happen? Something that was years ago. Just let it go. Come back to the present moment and be free of all that. You have to keep doing that till your mind gets the lesson, and then it gets the message and it does it. So beginner's mind. Begin the retreat every day. Every day is the beginning of the retreat. Every time you meditate is the beginning of the retreat. Oh. Sutta Question. In Samyutta 23.2, the Buddha said, you should scatter, destroy, and demolish form, making it unplayable. You should scatter, destroy, and demolish feeling and perception and choices, which I guess is mental formations, and consciousness, making them unplayable. And you should practice for the ending of craving. So what does it mean to destroy and demolish form and the rest of the 5 khandhas? Please, can you explain? Well, what the Buddha is referring to is not destroy yourself, the physical body. He means destroy upadana, clinging and attachment, which is the cause of suffering. Because that's what makes these khandhas into suffering. It's the identification, the clinging, the holding on to that which is inherently suffering. So, if I remember correctly, this sutta, didn't the Buddha talk about comparing the khandhas, this destroying and demolishing like sandcastles? He talked about kids. When you make a sandcastle as a kid, and then you get tired of it, what do? You go, or you get nowadays you get the Tibetan sand mandalas where they make the beautiful picture, and then they teach you to see impermanence, and they destroy it all in front of you. And everyone goes, no, and they do it as a teaching. The Buddha was talking about sandcastles, like kids. They make a sandcastle, they put all this effort in, they love it, spend a few hours doing it, but at the end they have to go home, or they tire of it, so they just kick it over. Or if you're on the edge of the sea comes and destroys it for you. That's the kind of perception you're looking at, this self, feelings, memories, thought formations, our moods and emotions, and the body. You're destroying the delight in the khandhas, which comes from craving and leads on to more birth and more suffering. So you're developing the insight to see these khandhas are impermanent. So it doesn't mean to say you destroy your body or feeling or thoughts. You don't have to destroy anything like that. You're seeing through attachment by seeing impermanence, seeing not self. That's what destroys attachment. So the body is perhaps the easiest one to see as impermanent. You keep contemplating this body. It's changing every day. Constantly seeing changes in the body, feeling, experiencing change in the body. It's getting older every moment. So when you see that, some of your attachment starts to fade away, because you know one day this body will not be here. You don't have to destroy it, you just know it. You know it with insight, with wisdom. So Ajahn Chah compared his body to a block of ice. You have a block of ice, what happens? You bring it out in the sun, it starts to melt. It doesn't melt in one go, it's gradually melting. So at first it seems the block of ice is still there, but then the water is coming off it, melts down. Depending on how hot it is, the ice block eventually is just a puddle. Today we did the reverse, didn't we? We had icy poles that hadn't formed, so just icy poles that were water, waiting for tomorrow for them to become ice. Oh, you don't know about this, I think. Anyway. But the human body, you can see it like a block of ice or a sandcastle. When you see impermanences, that's like you're no longer delighting in, you're no longer playing with your five khandhas, because you know they're impermanent. Ultimately, they don't belong to you. So like a kid giving up its toy, it's like, oh, you kind of lost interest, haven't you? If you've truly seen the impermanence in your five khandhas, you lose interest in them, meaning you don't grasp at them, crave them. You're still alive, you still feel and think, but you're not grasping at something that you know ultimately is not yours. And to grasp is causing suffering. Sense of loss, pain, attachment to pain, loss. So this is why the Arahant doesn't cry in the face of death, their death, or someone else they know dies. They don't cry, because they know it's inevitable. Their mind is Dhamma. Whereas the unenlightened person cries because you don't want to lose this person who makes you happy, or you don't want to lose your own life because you want to live and be around as long as possible. The Arahant knows it's inevitable. I must die. They see death all the time, but not in a way that they're depressed. That would be another attachment. They just know that's the way of things. Everything is impermanent. One day I must leave this world. It's not this world is not me, it's not mine anyway. They know that. Dear Ajahn, you mentioned watching the breath during meditation. Is me is not self. If me is not self, then who is watching? Very smart. Well, when we talk about it, we say you are watching the breath. Because otherwise, the teacher would have to go, there's no self, so no need to say anything. Or we just go, there is something watching the breath. You know, language gets complicated if you can't use the term me, mine, myself. But we're just using it as a useful way of conveying a message. You know, just the Dhamma is a kind of a message saying, describing things, pointing things out. But the experience is, there's no self, no person watching the breath. What is the breath? When your mind merges with the breath, you get to know what the breath really is. And what is it? It's just air. It's just air going in and out. It's not my air, it's not your air, it's just air. But the problem is, as soon as it comes in, we got my air. And if you're in any way suffering your lack of oxygen, lack of air, because you have a chest problem, a health problem of some sort, or you're under water and someone pulls your air tube out, or any of these situations where suddenly air disappears, then you see your attachment, don't you? Every gasp of air becomes important. And unfortunately, if you ever see someone dying, quite often there's a lot of discomfort there as they're struggling to get their breath in and out until eventually they die. It's because as soon as it comes into the body, it's part of the body, it becomes me, mine, my breath. So even the breath, which is just air, becomes self, doesn't it? But if you become mindful and you're reflecting, like we chanted tonight, the Anapanasati Sutta, you're reflecting on impermanence, relinquishment, letting go, cessation, cessation of clinging, cessation to clinging to the idea of self. Self is an idea that we've created, partly from externals, from culture, from other people, but mainly from ourselves. We automatically, because of our ignorance and craving and attachment, we make everything into self. We call it self-view, sakkaya ditthi. So even breath is my breath, my body, my feelings, my thoughts. And the more you attach, the more you're setting yourself up to suffer. When you practice mindfulness and clear comprehension and you're investigating this, you're sort of dispersing this sense of self that forms. So why do you feel peaceful? Because the sense of self disappears, at least temporarily. So when you feel really peaceful in samadhi is when there's no self at all. It's like just knowing the breath, the mind is just knowing. You're not creating an idea of self there, you're just knowing breath. So mind and breath become one. You're just with the mind. Of course, subtly there is a sense of self, very subtle one left, but you have to emerge back out of this state of stillness or samadhi and then contemplate how self arises, and you'll see it. You start to think. And you see how you attach to every thought. This is me, my thought. So you can come out of a state of real stillness where the sense of self disappeared. You get angry again. Or you have some kind of wanting, I want this. You can be really peaceful in the morning meditation, still, there's no self, and then you come out of that and what's for breakfast? A desire for food comes up. Or you want to know something about something else in the world, or what's happening back at home. Everything starts to re-emerge. Even if you've had a state of stillness, all this old conditioning comes back, and the sense of self forms. Feeling comes up, so you can be very peaceful in meditation, no self, and then you start to come out of that, and you've got pain in your legs. Oh, my legs hurt. My legs hurt. If you can maintain your mindfulness, there is pain there, but you're not attaching to it as self. You're just knowing, there's this painful feeling, it's like this. But of course, when we describe this whole experience, we use the term you are observing, you are watching, you have wisdom, you have mindfulness. So it kind of, in a way, reinforces the sense of self. It's your duty to look at that and investigate that, how obviously language reinforces the sense of self, but it's deeper than that. It's your mind grasping experience and forming a sense of possession or belonging. This pain belongs to me. This pain is part of me. I own this pain. I own this pleasure. I own this thought. I think, therefore I am. This is the practice of vipassana. You're investigating that. Say, where is the self in all of these things that I normally identify with? There's a lot of back and forth. You have an experience, and then you reflect on it, and that the experience has already changed. You say, oh, I knew that, but who knew that? Well, it was just an experience. Now I can remember it. Who remembers? Well, it's just memory. Nobody owns that memory, really. It's just a function of the mind that can remember things. Vipassana, if you do vipassana effectively, it's hard work. You keep investigating this little sense of self, keeps re-emerging, like weeds in the garden. It's like, if you want a nice looking garden, you have to work hard. If you want to see through the sense of self, you have to work hard, because it keeps coming up in everything. So in the end, there's no one watching the breath. There's just breathing, breathe out. There's a body, there's feelings, there's mental formations. But for Dhamma purposes, we can talk about a person practicing, but on the highest level there's no person, and that's your job to practice to see that, or to reveal that through your practice. But you get a taste of it when you're peaceful in meditation, because you're peaceful because the sense of self fades away. And you don't get angry, you don't get upset, your mind is not distracted, you're not sleepy. You're just knowing things. So the more mindful you are and the more your wisdom is active, the more you can see, oh yeah, there's no one here. Which is very peaceful, but as an idea it doesn't sound very good at all. You put that out to the world, oh, there's actually no one here at all, no self. Nobody wants to hear that, do they? The world is all about self. Making oneself bigger, better, richer, better looking, more important, more famous. That's the way our culture and society works, because that's just the way human beings are. The way of the Dhamma is actually dispersing the sense of self till there's nothing left. So the arahant has no sense of self, but they still talk about themselves. So they say, "Oh, I'm here. I'm doing this. I'm going here, doing this." You know, they'll still use the word self or me or mine, but there's no attachment. So there's no suffering and no rebirth, because there's no self to be reborn. No karma is made. Dear Ajahn, could you talk about lying down meditation from when one is unwell? Well, it's one of the 4 postures. So you definitely are aiming to practice mindfulness and develop insight in every posture. There's no kind of, oh, when I lie down I'll leave the Dhamma practice for tomorrow and now I'm just going to indulge in every defilement that comes my way. But sometimes we think like that, don't we? You notice when you're lying down you can easily be very unrestrained. You have all your fantasies, your favourite fantasy, your loves, your hates. When you're lying down, often, as we were talking earlier, you're falling asleep and all you're doing is thinking of who you hate and what you're angry about. Some people are like that. What you love, what you hate, all comes up when you're lying down. And when you're ill, your physical energy is down. Maybe there's pain as well, and physically you're weak. So all the more your defilements come out. So you hear people say, oh, when they're ill, they have all kinds of crazy dreams, even hallucinations sometimes. But crazy dreams, strong emotional reactions to things, confusion is very common. Because when physical energy is down, then mental energy and mindfulness and understanding are often weak. So on the one hand, you have to be very patient when you're ill. On the other hand, it's a great opportunity to understand Dhamma. Because if you can bring up the mindfulness when you're ill in that state, you often have deep insight can arise, breakthroughs. And I know some monks who have gained a level of enlightenment when they were ill, seeing the suffering of the body but maintaining mindfulness at that time when they're full of dukkha vedana, they're weak, they're tired, all kinds of pain, but they keep their mindfulness through it, so they really let go of their attachment to their body at that time. So it can be a time when you make good progress in your Dhamma practice. But usually the first experience of illness is you feel overwhelmed by it because you're so weak, tired, you lie down, it's hard to be mindful, so you're prey to all your mental proliferation, moods and dreams and images. So you have to be very patient with that. So when you're lying down ill, number 1 practice is probably just patience. And then number 2, try to establish mindfulness. And you can still practice mindfulness of breathing as you're lying down. It may be tough, because it's not the ideal posture to practice mindfulness of breathing, because your body weight pushes down on your chest and your breathing mechanism doesn't work so well when you're lying down. But maybe you have no choice. You notice the Buddha statues, there's not so many Buddha statues lying down, so it's obviously not the posture of choice, but there are some. And the Buddha is always lying on his side, what we call the lion posture, lying down on his right hand side with his hand on his head, head on his hand. And you'll see so they say, that's the posture the Buddha lay down in, very mindfully. And the Buddha himself would get tired, he'd get ill, especially as he got older. But he'd go into that posture, so he'd keep his mindfulness practice going, contemplating the arising and ceasing of dukkha vedana, letting go of attachment to the five khandhas, even lying down. So you can practice mindfulness, and you should practice mindfulness, but you have to have a lot of patience and effort and adjust your approach maybe. You can still do chanting lying down, you can listen to Dhamma lying down. Sometimes people feel like, I'm lying down, it's disrespectful to listen to the Dhamma chant. It's not. You just have to accept you can't sit up, so you lie down. So don't give up on the practice when you're ill, but just adjust your approach, be very patient, and work with maybe changing some parts of your practice. So practice a lot of metta, goodwill. Many people I know, you go and visit someone in hospital and they're really in pain, lying down, encourage them to practice a lot of metta, karuna practice for themselves, and then out for the people looking after them, their fellow patients. And they tend to do very well when they practice that. Because it helps to be an antidote to depression, because if your body is weak, in pain, ill, and you're attaching to the body as you, yourself, it's very easy to become depressed. You're only seeing what's wrong. So to practice loving kindness, compassion, bring up at least small positive moments where you're having a positive thought for yourself, out for others. It changes the way you think, doesn't it? If you're ill and your tendency is just to see what's wrong, you're missing out on everything, you can't do everything you would like to do, you feel pain, life is kind of miserable. But if you're practicing loving kindness, you start noticing what's good about your life. Maybe the first thing is, you're getting help. If you're ill but you get help from doctors, nurses, people in that line of business, that's something to rejoice in. I've met a good doctor, I'm in a good hospital. If you're at home, I've got people caring for me. That's something to appreciate and be grateful for. The fact that you may be ill, but you can still hear Dhamma, you can still talk, maybe even if only a little bit. That's something to be grateful for. You can still be mindful of a breath in, a breath out. That's something to be grateful for. So if you practice the metta first, then you start to open up, be more positive about your situation, and you focus more on what you can still do, what's still good in your situation, rather than what's wrong, which is what we tend to do. You meet people in hospital, they're always kind of down, it's the pain, and maybe they might feel they're not going to get out of there. If it's serious illness, that may be true. Maybe they're not going to leave the hospital. But if they're still alive, it means they can still reflect on Dhamma, hear the Dhamma, prepare themselves if they are going to die. If it's someone in terminal care, they've got time. If they're still alive and they've got a bit of time, you can encourage them to reflect on their life, the good that they've done, the good things that have happened. Tell them to finish up their business. There's no point planning all kinds of things now if you think you're going to die or you know you're going to die. But you can forgive everyone, because there may be some people you need to forgive. You can apologize to everyone if you need to. You can clear up all your business, give all your stuff away. Write your will, or just give stuff away even before you die. Just give it all away. Think it through. You can use terminal illness is a time to look after your mind, prepare yourself for the end, but doing it in a wise way, in a way of Dhamma, rather than, maybe it's actually you're worse off just having a sudden death, heart attack or something, because you had no time to prepare anything. You leave all this unfinished business. So if you are ill, that's a time to finish up all the sort of business of your mind where you've got attachments. Say goodbye to the people you love, treat them well, appreciate them, remember the good things of your life, forgive all the people that you need to forgive. So when you die, you've done it all. And there's no lingering karma to sort of upset you on your deathbed, because you've done it all. That would be a beautiful death, wouldn't it? So whether you're just ill or you're actually dying, use it as a time to practice Dhamma. Dear Ajahn, thank you for your teaching. I noticed there are ants, insects on the floor, pathways, stairs. When I sweep and accidentally I kill them, what kind of karma is that? I heard that there are types of karma, e.g. karma that will fruit in this lifetime, next lifetime, etc. So I guess that's a question as well. Well, yes, we're living in the forest, and the forest is full of bugs. That's what forests do. They're a living place for bugs. There's hundreds and thousands of bugs here. Flying bugs, crawling bugs, walking bugs, bugs inside, bugs outside. You have to learn to live with them. And number one is, don't harbour the intention to deliberately, intentionally kill them. So if a bug comes your way and you see it, try to carefully remove it, step over it, step aside. I have hundreds of ants outside my kuti every day. It's like a little game of hopscotch. You just do your best. You're bound to hit a few sometimes, but your intention is not to hit them. But I tell the ants every day, look, if you make your nest here, you're going to get hit. Your choice. I don't want to hit them, I don't want to squash them, but they're there and they know I'm coming and going because I go in and out every day. What can I do? They're just not listening, they're not changing their habit. So I do my best, I hop over them. Sometimes you get ants or other bugs there and some bird comes down. I say, look, ant, you're just a sitting duck for this bird. But they don't listen, the bird's there. Sometimes the birds are just having a feast. I was talking with Jeff, we've got a kookaburra, he just sits at my kuti every day and he's just there. Another one, another one, another one. It's just mass murder. So that's life in the forest. You have to accept it with equanimity. You don't want them to die, but things get killed by other animals. Occasionally you step on them or squash them, but that's not your intention. Your intention is to preserve life, be kind, compassionate, the best you can. Life, the world is like this. We sometimes inadvertently will squash things and hurt things, but as long as you're preserving this intention to not kill, that's all you can do, isn't it? There's not a lot. You can't deal with every ant in the world. You can't save every ant in the world. So you just do the best you can. There was a time when there was a monk walking meditation in the time of the Buddha, and it was dark. He didn't see there was a line of ants, so he was squashing them as he walked past. And then another monk came and said, "Hey, you're squashing these ants." He said, "Well, I've got no intention to kill." And the other monk went and told the Buddha, and the Buddha said, "Well, maybe it's better to find a spot where there's no ants." So, there's that side of it as well. There's preserving, there's keeping the intention not to kill, but there's also the practice of compassion where you say, okay, this area, if I walk Jongrom, walk meditation here, I may kill a lot of ants, so I'll move over here. So you also refine your practice of kindness and compassion. Or say you're sweeping and there is a load of ants there, well, just stop sweeping and then walk on a bit and sweep over there. You can be sensitive to the creatures around. If there's something there, we'll avoid it if best you can. If it's something bigger, sometimes the best thing with bigger animals is leave them alone. Like there was a bird out here the other day, it hit the glass, it happens, it's on the ground. Best thing is just leave it alone, it wakes up and recovers and it flies off. But some people, they want to pick it up and cuddle it and give it water, and the bird dies of shock. I've seen that before. Because birds, the last thing they want is a person picking them up. They hate it. So just leave it. If it's just sitting there, just leave it and it'll recover. Same with our little Joey, the little Joey that fell in the pond. Okay, it was drowning in the pond, so the novices get it out, put it in a blanket, keep it warm because it was freezing cold, give it some love. Okay, appreciated that, and then we put it in an empty bin, so it was just safe because there was a fox trying to get it. So we did that, and that's okay. But then after a while it's recovering, so we got it out of the bin, just put it there waiting for Mum to come and get it, because it's only a baby. And while it was waiting, I just wanted to check it was all right, so I went over, tried to stroke its head just to give it some kindness, but of course he doesn't want his head stroked, because now he's back in action, he's strong again, he's recovered, so he tried to scratch me. So I said, oh, okay, you're good. And sooner or later, Mum came along, picked him up, and now he's a much bigger kangaroo. We saved one kangaroo. And bigger animals, your metta doesn't have to be very much at all. You just say, leave him alone and he'll be fine. You want to go and cuddle him, stroke him, you get very upset. Humans are like this. Sometimes you get the human who wants to be a deva, so they want to be kind to everyone, and all these people are fine. Someone's coming along wanting to cuddle them and help them, and you say, just get out of here, I don't need you. Sometimes, we can overdo it. Like my friend, I always tell them the story of the friend when we were scouts, Cub Scouts. You had to find ways to earn bits of money by helping people, but it got a bit out of hand sometimes because you're always trying to earn more money and nobody wants to employ you, and you're trying to get little jobs and do favours for people to earn money, and nobody wants to employ you. So you're kind of almost like bullying them to find a job for you or do some favour for someone. So he saw an old lady with a bag in the market, and he grabbed her and he took her across the road. He said, I've taken you across the road. It's called Bob a job. Bob is like 1 shilling. I want my shilling. I've taken you across the road. She said, but I didn't want to cross the road. So metta, you have to be careful as well. Sometimes we go over the top. So, still a handful of questions. We'll leave them for tomorrow. We've reached the time for today, so we'll leave it there.